calls and virtual convening. So thank you for joining us today. I'm really, really excited about having an engaging and dynamic discussion today.
Wonderful. So the two of us co-chair the Young Professionals, and we're also joined by a number of partners today who oversee a number of youth networks. So they will introduce themselves more fully a little bit later on in the call, but I really wanted to extend a warm thank you to the Canadian Council of Young Feminists, the European Young Feminist Movement, He for She Mexico, we have the Young Africa Feminist Movement, we have UN Women on the call, Women Deliver Young Leaders, and members from our Commission on the Status of Women Youth Network. So wanted to warmly thank you all for being here with us, and we'll hear more from our partners a little bit later on too. Just to give a little bit of a framing in terms of what we're aiming to do together today, many of you might be familiar with the Commission on the Status of Women that happens at the United Nations in New York every March. But obviously for the current situation of what's happening with the world and coronavirus, that commission was canceled for the year. So it means that we had a number of events that our youth networks wanted to hold, particularly thinking about this 25th anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action, which still remains as the most progressive international instrument on gender equality right now. It's the 25th anniversary this year, and so we wanted to kind of mark that by a Generation Equality Forum that was meant to happen in Paris in July and also in Mexico this May. So we wanted to still create a space for young people online to kind of share their work, their advocacy, kind of what is emerging in their work and what they might want to raise with governments and the United Nations at this time in terms of their advocacy. But also we're conscious that much of the world situation has changed. There's been a lot for young people to navigate at this time. And we're really wanting to get a sense from you, all of you who are participating on the ground, kind of what's been coming up. Have things changed for you? If so, what has changed? And what might that mean for your advocacy? What will you now say to governments, to the United Nations, to other civil society groups who are working with the United Nations system, particularly on gender equality and young people? And we're hoping that maybe this could be part of an ongoing conversation that we wanted to start today to really get a sense from you and get your input, but then also to see what we can do kind of moving forward in the lead up to the Generation Equality Forum that will now hopefully happen next year. So we've got about 12 months until 2021 when this forum will actually happen. And how can we support one another's work, share information, kind of communicate more about the opportunities to engage at the United Nations level, and really just get a sense from you what would be helpful in your work. So I might pause here and check in if Saida has anything else to add at this point.
No, you captured it beautifully, Safira. Thank you for that overview.
Okay, so with that, we'll hear a little bit more about some of the things that we've been hearing, at least in terms of what's been going on with young people on the ground. But I'd like to hand over to Devin to do a little bit of an icebreaker activity. There are now 213 of us on the call, so we're too many to do one-on-one discussion. But Devin's gonna do a little bit of an icebreaker for us so that we get a little bit of a sense of who's on the call with us today. Over to you, Devin.
Hi everyone. So yeah, like Spira said, we have way too many people on the call, which is awesome. We have 215 people right now, but because of that, we can't all introduce ourselves personally. But we started, we have a little polling for everyone to kind of get a sense of who's on the call, start with interactive fun stuff. So I'm gonna launch that poll right now. And then you guys should all have it on your screen. Yeah. So the first question is, how are you feeling today? Just waiting for everyone to put their answers in. All right, we're slowing down. So I'll end the poll and I'll share the results. All right, most people are good. That's great. Hardly anyone is bad. I'm sorry for those 3 people who are feeling bad today. Okay, next. Okay, and the next one is just to give us an idea of how you've been affected by COVID-19. Yeah, because we're going to be talking a little bit about how our reality has shifted because of that, especially for young people, and how it's affected our advocacy. All right, slowing down. All right, so majority of people said somewhat, so that's good. The next poll is if you're familiar with the Beijing+25 and Generation Equality campaigns. All right, so most people are familiar, which is great. And if you're not familiar, or if you're like, I kind of know what's going on, our chair Hootie is going to be doing a small presentation on just like an intro to generation equality and Beijing+25. So we'll hear more about that in a minute. But let's go to the next poll, which is based on the action coalitions for generation equality, which we'll be talking more about too. And you can check multiple answers for this one. So if you're interested in more than one, feel free to pick all of them if you want to.
But I know these the ones that are on the side next to you can eat the rest of those that were on the
Great, slowing down. All right, so we have a pretty like even spread between the 6, which is awesome. And then our last poll, just a little bit of a fun thing. All right. Chocolate wins. I love chocolate, so happy about that. Okay. So that's the end of the polling. Thank you guys for participating in that. And then I also just wanted to share the Padlet that we prepared for this meeting. If you're not familiar with Padlet, I'm posting the link in the chat right now. And it was also in the link for the email we sent out, the reminder for the meeting. So what you can do if you open the link, there's a button with a plus sign in the corner, and then you can answer the questions that are at the top of the screen. The questions are just, you know, what's your name, where you're from, your organization, and then some of the challenges and the solutions of, you know, the reality right now, your activism in these times. So you can also feel free to introduce yourself and add to that too. And I'm done.
Thank you so much, Devin. It's really nice, actually. We wanted to give everyone the opportunity to post themselves on the map and share some of their work and what their organization is doing. So the Padlet is a really wonderful space to do that. As we go through the call today, we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to share in the chat. So if there are any questions, things that you want to share, things that you are doing that you don't get the chance to actually speak to because of limited time together, you're very welcome to post in the chat. As Devin mentioned in the chat, we'll be recording the meeting. So if you have others in your network who might want to kind of check in and see what was shared on the call, you're welcome to share the recording of this meeting with them. So we might hand over now to the chair of the NGO Committee on the Status of Women, to Huri, to give us a little bit of a presentation. We want to make sure that everyone is kind of on the same page. They know what we're talking about in terms of Beijing+25 and Generation Equality. And Huri is at the heart of a lot of the civil society organizing that's going on with that right now. And part of it is that she's really seeking to create space for young people's voices. So thank you so much to Huri, and we'll hand over to you to give a quick presentation on this.
Thank you, Safira. I'm not putting my camera on, not because I'm shy, but I think we're gonna have a PowerPoint. I don't think, you know, we'll all see each other later. First of all, thank you all for being. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whatever you're calling. And a special thank you to my amazing team, Safira, Saida, Devin, and our amazing partners. I'm just so excited that you all said, of course we'll do this. You know, just because COVID canceled CSW 64 doesn't mean our voices are going to be shut down. So I'm really grateful. Devin, are we going to the PowerPoint at this point?
Yes, you should be able to see it. Can everyone see it?
I'm not seeing it, but maybe others are.
Hold on. Okay. Can you see it?
Fantastic.
Okay.
So yes, CSW 64 was canceled. It was going to be an amazing hub of meeting place for everyone, where we were going to discuss about generation equality and what was it and how Beijing 25 was going to be celebrated. But, you know, we have been able to put many of our events online, and we're going to keep doing that going forward. And I'm also really grateful to have the opportunity to just reiterate how important this campaign is, and that the forums, you know, are postponed, but we are going to keep the momentum going. Since there were a few people who didn't know enough about it, I'm going to go through the slides that are updated. A lot of these slides are available on our website, and of course we'll share them with you later as well. Just so that we have like a little bit of a checking in and reminding of ourselves of what this is, how it came about, and where we're going. Next slide. So, hold on a minute. My screen is weird. Okay. The Generation Equality was created to commemorate Beijing Platform for Action, but not really clear on that. We will still keep going with CSWs. We're going to organize an amazing CSW 65, which will also pay homage to the Beijing +25, some of the events that we were not able to do the celebrations this year. We will bring it to the next year and address the new issues, of course. But that's next March. Right now, we really want to talk about how generation equality came about. UN Women Thought creatively said, you know, we're doing so much good work at UN. We're achieving a lot. We have achieved a lot since 25 years ago, but the pushback was really not right. You know,
Huri, we've lost you in terms of sound. Huri, we've lost you. Can you hear us?
you hear me now?
Yes, now I
You were
can.
breaking up. Okay. No, I'm so sorry. I feel like I have good connection. I don't know what's happening.
Now you're good.
All right.
I can hear you
So,
now.
okay, let's go through it pretty quickly then. And I know you have a lot to cover today. So yeah, the important piece here is the youth and the young voices, which is why this event is so important. So there was going to be, like Safira said, 2 meetings in May and July, which are postponed. And just so that you all know that we are also taking into consideration of bringing even the forums completely online if this COVID does not leave us alone in the next year. This campaign is that important. We will not stop, speaking out for it and adding more voices to it. As I said, you will all see these slides later, so I'm just going to go through them. Next slide, Devin. One of the ways that we wanted to really make sure that we had all types of voices in this campaign was to create these different groups. It might look complicated, but it's actually pretty simple, and it's just created for the idea of bringing in diversity, right? So the core group of Generation Equality are 4 members. It's UN women who sought out France and Mexico, who came forward and wanted to be partners in this from Global South and North. And the 4th is civil society. So civil society is not one person, right? I mean, I don't have to explain that to you all. So to be able to have that representation that is diverse and includes many voices, we created these different types of groups. We had the advisory group, which when we opened up, we got, I think, about 250 applications right away. It was open, emails went out, and some people, of course, felt left out because, it was happening really fast over the summer. But that advisory working group, I personally, with my executive committee and the core group, made a serious decision to say that that group will not be closed. We will keep adding. If you are interested in this work, send your email and information to Beijing+25 at NGO CSW. That information is available as well on our website. So that group is open, and we're about 500 members now. And we meet every 2 weeks on a Tuesday, morning, afternoon, New York City time, to accommodate different time zones. And then UN Women created a multi-stakeholder steering committee that was also to represent different constituents, right? Not just civil society, private sector, I think some governments, UN entities, governments are always in there with France and Mexico anyway. And then there's also another UN Women group that's completely their civil society partners, and that's about 50 plus civil society leaders that meet periodically as well to bring input. All of these groups, for example, the 500 advisory working group that I talked about, this is a group that we insist that not only they come to take information from us, but also to bring information to us from their constituents. We want this to be an open, collaborative process. And of course, last but not least, it's the Youth Task Force. You will hear a little bit more about that. One of our partners in this meeting is actually part of the, helps out with the Youth Task Force. Now, to make it succinct and more, comfortable for everybody, we selected 21, which is called advisory group, not the working group, just the advisory group. Those were 21 members that were selected by, thank you, Devin, that were selected by 5 volunteers from the advisory working group that looked over all the applications. And again, details of this information are in the slides. I don't want to waste your time on it, but I do like to repeat these things just so that everybody's aware of the process and how it all came about and where we're going from here. Next slide. What am I seeing? Yes. So this is also really important. The central premise is women's rights are human rights, of course, but a feminist approach with aimed at a positively transforming norms and power structures, creative, action-oriented, brave and safe. And this this especially, I think, is very applicable for youth to really come up with creative ideas of how we can spread this word. Also using existing powers and political commitments in place, for example, CEDAW, SDGs, the Beijing Platform for Action, of course, the document itself, and and adding what is important right now. For example, 25 years ago, LGBTQ rights were not even as prominent. We really need to address that more. Climate change, although as part of it, was not really that prominent. There are things that we can add to it, but really using the documents that we have to argue it. Next slide, please. So another group that really came about organically from the advisory working group were some volunteers. The drivers are Sun Yang, Melissa Opredi, and Krishanti, who said we need more of a deep dive conversation instead of just, you know, what have you been up to? What are your recommendations? And how can we highlight you know, generation equality more in different sections? So the feminist
Huri, we've lost you again.
and women's now. Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. We got you now. You're back.
Okay. All right. Luckily, all of this is in print. So let's move on. And I feel like I'm taking up too much time anyway. So please look into the Feminist Women's Action Plan. Since their consultation with the 6 thematic groups ended, and of course, the forums were canceled and CSW 64 were canceled, they actually took that energy and now are redirecting it into this university teach-ins. So I urge you to click on that and learn more about it. And if you are interested, send an email, sign up, join them. They're doing some amazing work, so I'd like to support them fully. So just in closing, let's just visit the objectives for Beijing+25 and Generation Equality. It's the emergence of a coherent feminist agenda with demands reflecting on an agreed set of priorities. And all of this is coming through consultations, right? And there's still room to add. Achieving cross-cutting alliances, galvanize activists globally who will speak with one voice against suppression. To me, this is really, really important. And one of the examples that we like to bring up is like the Me Too movement, right? So when that happened, yes, it was a few people who really spoke up, but how many people came behind it and how important it was and how it really did bring down a lot of these patriarchal institutions and men who really we thought were unbreakable. So it'd be really interesting to think of it that way, that this voice, our voices can come together and really change this needle. And the other part that's really important to me is help connect activists across silos, working for similar objectives to achieve goals. Over the years, I'm sure if you're an activist on the ground, you know that how many people do so many different things and we're not aware of each other, and sometimes we're duplicating, or we think that you're in the reproductive rights, I'm in climate, so you do your thing, I do my thing. So we're hoping this campaign will really bring us even more together. Help create platforms that will address inequalities and lead to action. That's actually based on what was so successful about Beijing 25 years ago. That's what it did. And obviously, last but not least, address inequalities created by patriarchy, colonialism, racism, and militarism. It is time we bury those. So I think the final slide is just for more information. How can I forget action coalitions? This is really important. I am so sorry. So the action coalitions actually were going to be announced and addressed, but since the forums were postponed, we now have the action coalitions that really emerge from consultations with civil society and the core group. And we can actually really think about on how we can address these issues, and more information will be shared on how action coalitions work. But it's really important to really figure out how each one of us can have a part in this, right? So I know that the feminist women's movement, we're also addressing this on how we can translate these global action coalitions or the generation equality action coalitions to the local level. So however it is that really can help you achieve your goals. So, and I believe you can find out more about them obviously from this link. And I do believe that the next slide is the final slide. Feel free to ask me questions in the chat while I pay attention to what everybody else is saying. I will answer whatever questions you have. Also, you can reach out to me at Huri at NGO CSW, HOURY at NGO CSW. And thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to really push for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Huri. Before we move forward, I would just like to ask all participants to put themselves on mute if possible. And again, thank you, Huri, for such an incredibly important and timely overview of generation equality and Beijing+25. A lot of fantastic information and takeaways from that overview. And as we were just talking about the significance of building alliances and linking across silos, it forms a great segue to the next part of our call, where we are all going to be talking about how we are reading our reality at this time and how young people are leading, organizing, and really inspiring others today. So for this part of our call, we would like to start the conversation by hearing from our partners about what has been happening for young people in their networks, in their region, both before and during the COVID crisis, and in terms of meaningful engagement and response, what has been working or what hasn't been working. And after we hear from our partners, we will be moving into smaller breakout groups and giving all our participants here on the call the chance to share their experiences and thoughts in a smaller, more intimate setting. So let's get started. I would like to kick things off by inviting our partners from the Marsa Sexual Health Center in Lebanon to share their thoughts and experience. And we have the executive director of Marsa here with us on the call. So Diana, if you can hear us, over to you.
Thank you, Saida. Actually, at Marsa, we are a nonprofit organization that provides access to sexual and reproductive health services. And we, as you know, in the MENA, it's a conservative region, and talking about sex and sexuality is never easy. So we also have a lot of stigma around sex, and in particular to one of our target populations, the LGBT community. We have a lot of penal codes in Lebanon, or like we have a penal code in Lebanon and other countries that criminalize homosexuality. So all of these conditions, they make our work a bit more difficult. Recently, we have seen a lot in the MENA region. Since 2011, we've been seeing revolutions. And most recently in Sudan last year, we saw the success of the revolution. And in Lebanon, it was ignited in October 2019 after the economic crisis started rising. This revolution was led by the youth in Lebanon. It has been ongoing for 4 months before the beginning of the COVID crisis. We saw a bit of retreat during the period of the confinement, but as the economic crisis was escalating, we saw that the youth were also getting more engaged within their communities and providing food drives and working with people who have lost their jobs. We know that the tourism has been hit very hard in the region, and a lot of people have lost their jobs and their income. For this reason, there has been a lot of community work. And I can give an example in Lebanon where the organizations working on LGBT rights and fighting HIV have come together. And we are trying to collect donations and grants to provide food and hygiene support for our communities. And at this time, I would like to highlight the danger that the LGBT community is in the MENA region due to, as you know, the penal codes and the stigma. We have seen in Morocco that a lot of the gay men have been targeted, especially on dating apps, after a call was made by somebody to target gay men and out them. And this has led to a series of attacks and even at least one case of suicide. So for us, it's going to be one of our goals for the future to work on protecting sexual minorities and everybody else who is targeted in these conditions, especially women, young people, and refugees. Thank you.
Diana, thank you so much for your insight. That was really important and thought-provoking, and again, really appreciate you sharing. I would now like to invite our partners from Women for Change Cameroon to share next. So Zona Ziva, if you can hear us, you have the floor.
Hi, so this is Zone Zero. Just to cue from what our colleague have already said, basically before COVID-19, people had their normal challenges among especially young people. You had issues of unemployment, which was, the usual challenge. And in terms access to basic services, and the dynamic completely changed with the coming of COVID-19. Then some people who were self-made entrepreneurs and petty traders who relied on what they sell in the market for that day to sustain their livelihood, or even self-sponsor themselves to school, had to lose completely their job and then had to face the new reality with COVID, self-isolation, and financial constraints, and also limited access to even medical health services, which is, a sad reality at the moment, because that have been put in place to curb the virus. Elements around self-employed entrepreneurs has not really been factored into some of these responses, and then it makes one to question how comprehensive and how inclusive are some of these approaches, because in as much as we want to combat the COVID-19, but people need to also live a healthy, decent, and secure life. And these are some of the questions that as activists, as young people within our respective constituencies, we keep asking, that how do people whose livelihood dependent on the day-to-day activities that they did, how would they, what is the state doing in terms of raising some of these limitations? Because majority of young people are unemployed, and a lot of them need to live on certain activities in order to make a living. And in terms of some of the activities that young people have led, which is very, very innovative, I would say the COVID-19 has instituted a new sense of volunteerism among young people, community coordination, and young people taking certain leadership in addressing other challenges that young people faces. For instance, young people have been able to coordinate themselves and carry out community outreach to teach other young people and their peers on how to protect themselves and stay safe, just basic hygiene, washing, and also wearing of the mask. Because before, when we were told we need to put on masks, people just thought you just cover your nose and that is it. But however, with self-education, a lot of young people took on to that initiative to use social media, WhatsApp, and other platforms to educate their peers on best ways to to keep safe. And I will applaud the adolescents that we work with. For some of them are on this call, like Liz and Flavor. They in speaking out about their respective experiences and what it means living in a time like this. Most of them had never faced such a situation in their life, and it's an experience, and they're kind of seeing what, how inequality the society is, and it's time for them to take leadership in terms of speaking out against many forms of inequalities that young people face, and including adolescents. Hello, I don't know if I've been clear enough. I keep hearing my echo.
We can hear you, Donazova.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you again so much for sharing. And now we would like to welcome P4C representative from Mexico City. So Jose, if you can hear us, over to you.
Hi. Yeah, I can hear you. Can anyone hear me? I hope so. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. As already said, I am the founder and former president of the NGO chapter at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, working very closely with UN Women Mexico and the coordinators of He4She Global. So, well, first of all, I would like just to highlight the transition of gender equality perspective from 1995, since the adoption of the Beijing Declaration, and how it has had a very wide scope through all the global agendas, such as Addis Ababa Agenda, the Paris Agreement, the New Urban Agenda, and of course with the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. Talking about a little bit about the crisis and how it has changed things. Well, since the COVID crisis, we can all tell that domestic violence has increased its numbers very highly, especially in countries like Mexico, for example. And one example of this is the women's shelters to protect women who are being aggressed. Here in Mexico, normally the shelters receive 2 or 3 applications per month. Nowadays, they are receiving the same number, but per day. So that tells that it's increasing very quickly. From my work, I'm currently working for an NGO, and it has been really impressive how public institutions in charge of handling complaints are implementing new ways for solving cases of gender violence. And well, they have been following up on them via WhatsApp. They are solving cases virtually. So it says a lot, I think, about the implications of institutions crisis, coordinating, of course, with civil society and coordinating between these organizations. From the activities of the campaign of the He4She movement at UNAM, of course, they have been managed in person. However, the global coordinators have launched recently this digital campaign called At Home. So it is really interesting because it is about to highlight the participation of men and boys to share their responsibilities, and of course, implying that it is not about helping in this task. Of course, it's to highlight that domestic chores are responsibility of everyone, and I think it says a lot about the emerging masculinities that are happening right now. So I think that would be my input for today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Jose. That was incredibly valuable.
Thank you.
Now, we would like to turn it over to our partners from the Young Feminist Europe. Dina, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. I think someone is not muted. I hear some voices.
If you could just take
Maybe it's just
maybe it's on mute, that would be really useful.
It's so great to be on this call today, and that we managed to get so many people together to exchange some of our feminist realities and just to hear what my colleagues have been, or what other young feminists from different regions of the world have just told us about how their activism changed and what is going on. I feel this is really powerful to hear. And Jose, I was just in Mexico City because, I mean, next week was supposed to be the Generation Equality Forum, and I spent a lot of time in Mexico City. So now I'm back in Germany. I'm based in Germany. I'm a co-founder of Young Feminist Europe. And I'm also I'm a colleague of Huri's on the Global Civil Society group for the Generation Equality Forum, and part of the youth quota there. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about what did young feminists, what did we do before in Europe, and how has COVID affected us. And maybe just to flag, if you see my background, this is this is our campaign currently. Michael, it counts. We have articles and events and webinars, and this is one of our campaigns, or our main campaign at the moment at Young Feminist Europe. We see ourselves as an open platform that is not a closed organization, but rather a platform that amplifies young feminists. So one of our key things we do is movement building, partnership building, engaging with others. And we do this in different ways. We harness technology a lot. So that's also a thing. What has not changed so much is the work we do, or how we work together, because we already work in a virtual team from all over Europe, which is really amazing. And so there we haven't felt so many detriments on COVID on our work. But we also engage in all kinds of activities. And part of our what we do is combining grassroots activism, but also working on policy, really trying to open up spaces. So with this place we have at this global advisory group, what we do is we work a lot together with the youth task force, with other young feminist groups from around the globe, and really be careful to not have us tokenized. That is an issue we face, or young feminists face a lot. That was something before Corona, something that was discussed a lot. How do we truly make young feminist voices and activism impactful, meaningful, and not just, I don't know, sometimes write an article or do the social media. We did a survey last summer for young feminists for the regional review in the European region about the obstacles young feminists face. And what was really one of the key issues was the accessibility in different terms, accessibility to existing structures, accessibility within the feminist movement, even because we try to change structures. Our feminist work is, we had this, some colleagues, Hannah, I think you're on the call, so I'm naming you because you had this great hashtag Feminists Want System Change. So really, if we want to work systemically, we believe, and that's one of the key things we focus on, is also being very careful not to perpetuate the same power structures within our movement. And it is very difficult for young feminists to access this and really have this heard, and our voices heard, and have an impact in decision-making spaces and policy spaces. So one of our key advocacies at the moment is not just identifying what young feminists want, but also to open the space in a way that it can be placed impactful and meaningful and really change something. Yeah, so that's what we do. Funding is always an issue, and I think this is something that will probably affect us even more now with COVID. One of our things we ask for is different types of funding, more flexible funding, in general, more funding for feminists, but also young feminists. We organize differently. We organize sometimes in Facebook groups, sometimes we support each other on Twitter or in a digital spaces, in different spaces. So to address this, how we organize changes, we also need to address how organizations are funded and all of this. So this was something we focused on a lot in our advocacy work. And now with COVID, I would say the same things are still relevant, but some things added to it. And maybe something, I don't know what you did, but when the crisis arose, it's a global crisis. Everyone is affected by it, and sometimes we all react differently to it. So some are in freeze mode, some are in like creating and something. And sometimes it's just good to hold in for a second and sense and see what's going on. How do I feel with this situation? Do I feel anxiety? Do I feel stress? Do I feel calm maybe? And so what we did at Young Feminist Europe, because we have been affected in different ways also personally, and I think it's important to also bring the personal level into this. We had a call a few weeks ago, a month ago, just where we met and not talked about work or not talked about what we are going to do next, but just really took the time to exchange how we feel with the situation, how we are affected. One group member had corona and was really sick and hospitalized, and then we talked about the issue of mental health, and I think that's special when it's important for everyone, but also I think young people, how does that cause anxiety when we are looking for jobs? Maybe some of us were very isolated in the apartments or could not move because, yeah, and others in our team have kids. So all of a sudden, like home office and childcare, that does not fit together. I think someone said like home office, who says home office and childcare are combinable, doesn't understand neither childcare nor home office. So, but I'm going to stop here, and I hope we can engage in more conversation and also take the time to feel into ourselves and sense. And I want to encourage us in this time of disruption that systems are really crashing and in question, and how can we think about to use this to create our feminist futures and to think about what we want and maybe see it as something positive that can emerge from this. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Xenia. And thank you so much to all our partners for sharing their insight. And before we move forward, I wanted to finally turn over the floor to our partners from the Canadian Council of Young Feminists. So Alexandria, over to you.
Wonderful, thank you. Hello, bonjour, everyone. So again, I'm here with the Canadian Council of Young Feminists, which is the Youth Advisory Council for the Honourable Mary Lou McPhedran, who is an independent senator here in Canada. So this youth advisory came out of the request of young people across Canada to have a more meaningful space to start to bridge the gap between young leaders, global citizenship, and Canadian parliamentarians. So we as a council work with the Senator on a variety of social justice and human rights issues here in Canada, and also looking out to the global community. Within the light of the cancellation of the Commission on the Status of Women this year, Senator McPhedran turned around and put on a youth forum here in Canada for 2 days at the Senate. We had over 40 young people from across the country come together still to have a lot of these conversations that we originally intended to have at the United Nations back in March. And so from that meeting, there's kind of three main projects that have come out from it that we've been currently working on. So I just wanted to highlight those to all of you, and then I know I'll have some really great conversation after that. So one of the first things that came out of this youth forum is looking at the age of participation for young people in Canada. So for us, the federal voting age is 18. And so right now, the senator that we're working with and all of her youth advisors have started a steering committee to support her intent to table a bill to reduce the voting age from 18 to 16, so that here in Canada that we can have 16-year-olds starting to be able to vote, especially when we're looking at so many of the issues we have here, especially within the environment and different social justice issues. A lot of people under 18 are so active in that, and this is really a great chance for them to really have their perspectives and their voices reflected and heard in our governing system here. So that's one of the first things that have come out of this. We've also started a basic income task force. So with everything that's currently going on with COVID, our governments have been working really hard to kind of ensure funding opportunities for students who have student debts, for different organizations, local businesses, all of these different people that are being so severely impacted by this. And it's really showing our communities what it really means to have a basic standard of living. And so we're using this opportunity to really push forward and propel this idea of a basic income that could be implemented here within our country. And we're looking at examples and studies or tests that have been done globally as well. So that's one of the other things that we have a youth task force currently working on to support here in Canada. And last but not least, we are also doing a month of Pride at Home events. So we are still seeing so much discrimination and exclusion and violence for people who are in the rainbow community, so the LGBTQ plus community. And so we're going to be doing over a month's worth event of panels and conversations and events because so many of the Pride events and things like that have been canceled from COVID. So those are some of the different things that we've been working on here within the Canadian Council of Young Feminists, and all of our youth advisors are continuing to work to kind of gear towards the Generation Equality Global Forum so that we can continue addressing the issues that we're seeing here and then also come together in global community again to continue addressing those together. So I'm looking forward to spending the rest of our conversation here with all of you. Thank you, merci.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alexandria, and to all our partners for sharing their insight. It's so incredibly important and heartening to hear these different perspectives and to hear about how youth networks are mobilizing around the world at this time. So again, thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts and experiences. And now I'm going to walk us into the second part of this session, where all of us together will be breaking out into individual small groups to have an even more engaging discussion in a smaller, more intimate setting. I believe Zoom will randomly assign us into groups of approximately 10 people. So there's a good chance we will be in groups with all new faces and new colleagues, and everyone will have a chance to share their thoughts and experiences. So as we get started, just wanted to highlight that we will be allocating approximately 30 minutes for these breakout sessions, and we should be back by around 2:20 p.m. And we have some prompts available for you on the slide here, where we are asking you to have an informal discussion. Just go around as a group, introduce yourselves, share your perspectives on the key challenges and what your thoughts are on the solutions to these challenges. And then also post them on the Padlet link here. And for those of you who haven't used Padlet before, it's an online bulletin board, and the link is available here and on the event invitation as well. So yeah, let's get things started. And we know it can be a little unnerving to be in a group of strangers, but we are all colleagues and fellow advocates here. So please feel free to share and engage, and maybe go around the group alphabetically or however you want and are comfortable with. So I think Devin will be breaking us off into groups, and we should be back together in half an hour. Thank you, everyone, and have a great discussion. Over to you, Devin.
Okay, so welcome back, everyone. We'll just take a quick minute as people are returning back from their breakout groups. but we hope you were able to connect, meet some other fantastic people on the call who are doing some great work, learn a little bit more about what's been happening for a variety of people around the world at this particular time. We might move into this next section of our call, which is really how have some of the things that we have shared, that we've heard, that we're experiencing right now, how will this shape our advocacy moving forward? And what would our meaningful participation with the United Nations, particularly in terms of this Generation Equality Forum, and our governments at this time look like? Are there things that we wouldn't have necessarily shared before, but maybe we would like to share now that this crisis has kind of revealed certain things to us in terms of young people and gender equality? I know at least on my call, a number of things were shared in relation to funding, education, employment, what's happening with our families, technology. Some of us are being very lucky to have access to online working and working from home. Others don't have access to technology or communication options right now that are online. So we wanted to open it up to the plenary to hear back from you. How does this emerging reality, now that we've had a chance to talk about the current situation, how does this shape our advocacy now? And what will we say? How do we want to kind of engage? And just thinking that we have a year, about 12 months until the Generation Equality Forum, how might we want to organize ourselves? Could we see a call like this becoming something regular in the future? Would you like opportunities to connect with other young people in your region? Would we like to create spaces like this, but maybe in other languages? So this is a point now that we've had a chance to read and consult about what's happening. What will our advocacy look like, and what will our next steps together look like? What will be helpful to you? So if you would like to speak, there is a raise hand function. Most of you should know how to use this, but if you click on the participants tab, you'll see a little blue hand that you can raise. And so if you can raise your hand, we'll take a few people to speak and share. You're also very welcome, if you don't want to speak, to put your thoughts in the chat, and we'll try to summarize some of those thoughts towards the end. So I see a few hands being raised. I'll hand the floor over to Wendy to speak first. If we can just be mindful that it would be nice to hear from as many participants as possible, so try to keep your remarks short and sweet is best. Okay, over to you, Wendy.
Thank you. This is our new reality on this forest, but I think it would be best to engage and do it in terms of languages as well, and so that we can all hear each other, and we have a lot of youths from all regions all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a great suggestion. Okay, we're going to hand over to the next hand, Ziflozile. Over to you. Did I say that correctly?
Okay.
Yeah, actually, well done. I was waiting for you to pronounce my name, Zipho Zihle. Hi, everyone. My name is Zipho from South Africa. So what this time has just enlightened in my mind is just the issue of gender-based violence. And it speaks a lot to gender equality. As women, we have somewhat found our voice. And I feel like, in turn, we are now facing gender-based violence because we've found our voice, because we can speak now for ourselves. For instance, in South Africa alone, in the first week of lockdown, we had about 86,000 gender-based violence cases reported. So I think there's a lot of work that can be done. That's where our advocacy also needs to just focus on what are we missing when it comes to gender-based violence. Is it the root cause analysis that we are missing? Maybe our approach, does it need to be more inclusive to the other gender or the perpetrators as well? There must be something that we are missing, because since lockdown there's been increasing numbers of gender-based violence cases. Thank you.
Yes, that's a very good point. That's a worrying trend also globally as well. So thank you so much for raising that.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
Thank you. Next is Elvira. Over to you.
Hello, thank you. This is Elvira from Mexico. And I would just would like to suggest that we have another call, maybe in Spanish, for example, because we have many people that cannot speak English, so they are not able to join this conversation. And something else that is, we need to keep in mind that not all the youth people have access to internet, especially in these times. We in our group, we were just talking about that, and we have many people with lack of access to basic services like water, food, healthcare, and also internet. So we need to keep in mind that thing. And also is that I would like to share that we have in common that the violence is increasing, like in many places. And we have also this gap of data because many people are not even able to make this criminal notice to the authorities. So, but I think we need to continue this conversation. We need to engage more people, and I think it's a wonderful idea to have also this in other languages. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Some great suggestions there. Next is Caitlin.
Hello, Caitlin Hone, based in the United States, working for the Batanga Foundation, which is based in Benin. In our group, so 2 points, discussions like this, even breakout sessions specifically in French for Francophone implementers and advocates would be great. We had to do some sort of real-time translation in our breakout group. And then also several members of our group spoke about the most sort of like perhaps difficult to reach women and girls at the best of times, those without access to even cell phone service, who are particularly rural areas. Their voices are even more difficult for us to hear and register, and their contributions to these larger conversations are going to be even more difficult to capture now that there's greater physical distancing restrictions and a lot of project implementers and those who are trying to collect data. So just perhaps more discussions on facilitating the participation of these most sort of off the beaten track, off like the paved road, off the electrical grid, women and girls. How can we best ensure their voices are heard in this particular moment?
Perfect. These are great ideas. And any suggestions or even any experiences that people have had around this last point about engaging those who don't have access to technology or the internet at this point? How can we engage them and hear their stories and share information? Next on the call is Racha. Over to you.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much. And it's very good to hear from everyone and to learn about everyone's reality. I just want to maybe shed light on an issue that has touched me personally, and I'm sure it's affecting a lot of youth, which is unemployment and people who are losing their jobs due to COVID. For example, my husband just lost his job 3 weeks ago, and I'm a new immigrant in the US. I have been on the look for a job, and now things are even more complicated. And I heard that I've seen the statistics, and there's more than 3.5 million people who have been unemployed in just the last month in the US. And I'm sure there's a big percentage of them to be youth. And this is something that's happening all around the world. So my suggestion or my question to you is, how can we find a way to maybe create maybe use the Mighty Networks or the Young Feminist Europe platform to create a channel where people who know of job openings in their organizations or in their networks to put it forward for those youth who need jobs. I think we need to support each other in that way as well, because it's very affecting us. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a great suggestion, and I'm sorry to hear that it's been a tough time for you and your husband. I hope anyone on the call who knows of jobs and opportunities, please post in the chat. It would be nice to support each other in this way too.
Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat box if anyone knows of anything. Thank you.
Perfect. Good one. Thank you. Next on the chat is Galaxy Tab A. No name, but if you're calling in from the Galaxy, please, over to you. Galaxy, maybe while you're figuring out unmuting, we'll move to Greta.
Hi, I'm Greta from Germany. I'm in the Youth Council of Plan International Germany. And I can just agree to basically everything that's been said. I think regional firms would be a great idea, but also this global one. And one thing that's important for me is that we should be mindful to always combine the different generations, because this is a huge issue. So that in my group, I guess it was by accident, mainly youth. So I think it's very valuable when there's a lot of generations differently, and so that there's a valuable and important exchange, and not just among young people, which is also important, but amongst all generations.
That's a great point. Thank you so much for raising that. And on that point, wanted to say thank you for all of those who joined us on the call, who are from the baby boomer, older generations, who have really shown up on this call today to support the work of young people and hear more from young people. So thank you. Hopefully we can do more of that moving forward. Next is Nisha.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for hosting this. And I really want to echo everyone who's mentioned the access issues as far as internet, and that's something that has really shaped, I should say, sorry, I'm Nisha, and I'm in Washington, DC, and I work with the White Ribbon Alliance. And we're coordinating some efforts with the Global Respectful Maternity Care Council to consider the ways in which both our communication and advocacy around maternal and sexual and reproductive health and rights is changing in the new context that we face. We have a lot of international alliance members, and of course the RMC Council is global. And so we've really been trying to make sure that we're capturing stories and providing a platform and a space to do that, and utilizing the networks that we do have that maybe can't get out in person anymore, but that are still able to, you know, via more innovative or more context-specific communications platforms, are able to capture stories from midwives or from actual healthcare providers or from women themselves who might be experiencing, you know, violence and childbirth or pregnancy, and making sure that that is captured as evidence. But then also in changing the way that we do advocacy to be more innovative, like we talked about in our breakout sessions, but really providing explicit calls to action and making sure that we're not framing this as it's, you know, women versus everyone else, that it's a sort of a zero-sum game, that in promoting women's rights within COVID, that it's somehow sacrificing resources that could be going elsewhere. And so we've been really trying to make sure that we're maximizing our outreach, and we have a campaign called Safer Together, and I can put the link in the chat box. But we're also really trying to, in the form of innovations, is just like continuing to reach out to others and to utilize our, you know, our alliances in other countries to do so, even though we can't be meeting in person.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It would be great to, yeah, share those resources. Thank you. Next is Catherine.
Hi everyone, my name is Catherine. I'm based in South Africa. I work with ActionAid International, and yeah, thank you very much for this really interesting and insightful call. I just had a suggestion, and I know the Youth Task Force and UN Women have been doing this and were doing this prior to 2020 in the lead up to Beijing+25 review. But just a continued and concerted effort to raise awareness amongst young people about the importance of the Beijing platform for action, and how this was really and still is critical to ensuring gender equality and women's rights. I think that popular education amongst young people is really critical in safeguarding women's rights, and we're seeing you know, an increased attack on women's rights and gender equality and multilateralism more and more. So it really is important for young people to understand the importance of this declaration, as well as multilateralism and the work that the UN does more broadly. And then in relation to COVID-19, also around popular education in what are the driving forces and structural causes of COVID-19, and why is it that COVID-19 is impacting women in and from the global south more, and just helping young people understand that they are driving forces, that this isn't just something that's happening, much like the climate crisis. What are the factors and the systems that need to change for us to be able to address this pandemic and broader social justice issues?
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that, Catherine. Next on the list is Crystal.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Crystal Camejo. I am from Trinidad and Tobago. I am currently the founder and CEO of Future Focus Empowerment Institute International. It's a youth empowerment institute that encourages and creates platforms for young people to develop confidence, competence, and character through community engagement, education, and empowerment. On the empowerment back end, I'd like to shift the conversation a little bit. And I know that we are faced with so many different complexities that, you know, to put everything into one context is, you know, impossible. But as we are faced with this global pandemic, the first that we've ever experienced like this at our age, you know, it actually threw me back to realize the importance of resting, reflecting, and redirecting. And as I ponder and work alongside my board of directors to actually create an opportunity for young people to express themselves, because a lot of them are not, especially in my culture, Trinidad and Tobago, we're always outside, outgoing, you know, being confined in the house is not something that we are used to. So it's a lot of issues surrounding that, especially in the context of mental health. We see it as something tabooed in our culture to go see a psychologist. You know, it's against the norm, because it's easier for us to say, nothing is wrong with me, I'm fine, I'm just having a bad day, when it's really something that you need to treat with, which evolves into something major later down. So as I try to shift the conversation a little, I just want to bring some words of encouragement. You know, as we are resting in our homes, you know, some of us maybe going to school online or have the access to do so. Some of us have the ability to work from home, but a lot of us are just at home and opportunities stripped from us because of the, the economic downturns that's happening, not just in the United States or in the Caribbean, but throughout the world. It's important for us to come back to our center and ask ourselves, what's our true calling? Who are we? What is our purpose? Are we living a purposeful life? Sit down and write and think about the things that you have inside of you, the talents, the abilities that you have inside of you that you can literally help the world when it opens again. However, we define the new normal, we're not sure how it's going to be, but at least in this time, as we sit down, some of us may be wallowing in self-pity because, we are going through these challenges, we are at home, we don't have a job, we lost our job, we can't pay for certain things that, we would have been able to do before, shifting our mindset to that which we can literally think deeper than just the situation at hand, but how can we overcome and how can we prepare in this time to, take our lives and the lives of those around us to the next level. So that's my contribution today. It's different in terms of dynamics or the conversation that we're having, but I decided to bring a different context to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Yeah, that's an interesting dimension too. This mental well-being piece of it is really important. So thank you for raising that. Next, we have Janice.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? So my name is Janice Daniel. I am from Barbados. I'm also a part of the organization I Am a Girl NGO. And basically what I wanted to share is that, so usually during Easter, we have our annual Easter retreat where we interact with girls from all walks of life. And this year we were unable to do that because of COVID-19. And what we've done is use technology to our advantage and had retreat online through video calling, through Zoom, and we're working all the activities we created to really fit the girls being at home, and they've still be able to get the information and teachings and works that we were wanting them to have for this year's retreat. And also, I live in a country where it is very tourism dependent. So there are people losing jobs, including myself, left, right, and center, all over the world, especially here. And it's been very interesting to see how the community aspect has really shown itself here in Barbados, because I've seen many persons in Barbados using WhatsApp to create a food drive for persons in their neighborhood, because really there are resources out there, but not everyone are able to go and receive them. Or some people, like in the Caribbean, we find people that have a lot of pride and would rather stay hungry than to go out and ask for something. And I found that people are, in a sense, in their communities, kind of taking no for answer. Even if they have to leave it on your doorstep, you're going to take it in at some point. And like the young lady from Trinidad had just said, mental health is very shaky now in Barbados, because we are from my country, they banned the sale of alcohol. So, and in the Caribbean, there are a lot of people who have drinking problems, and because they no longer have access to that, a lot of issues have started to rise within homes and with persons. And coming May 4th, it will be reinstated. The sale will continue, but coming up that, I would love to think that persons have did some introspection on themselves and the issues they have, to start looking into how they can deal with their mental health. That's all for me, but thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you so much, Janice. Those are really good points too. We have about 10 minutes left together on the call, so I see there's a few more hands. We should be able to get through everyone. If we just make sure to keep it short and sweet. Next is Christian.
Thank you. Well, we were in the call together in our small group, and it was really nice like, listening to a lot of people talk about their initiatives. So what I started to think was that I couldn't like actually create partnerships with these people that I thought were making such great initiatives. So I think one way that the UN could engage like this group of activists is like to allow a platform just for activists to connect without the moderation of the UN, or just a small event that is like only 2 hours that can let people like contact themselves directly, create partnerships, and all of that comes in between. Thank you, Sapira.
Thank you so much, Christian. Next we have Janilia.
Thank you so much for allowing me to chime in here. Within our group, we discussed the many issues, the results session, I'm sorry, we discussed how we could provide the tools necessary for within our separate NGOs, and how we could collaborate as one effort in making the change that we want to see necessary. And I do think that as separate NGOs, I think someone mentioned it earlier that we should work together to basically discuss these issues and to provide the tools that everyone needs, because nationally, internationally, everyone is facing the same issues as it relates to COVID-19, be it lack of access to internet or loss of jobs, domestic violence. I know that this is something that is on the rise. I think that these are more discussions that we should have. And I feel the need to bring up our conference that we're going to have in May on the 22nd. I'm sorry I didn't mention it, but I am from Future Focus Empowerment Institute International. As Crystal may have mentioned initially, she is the CEO and the vice president. This is going to be a very powerful women's empowerment conference. It is going to be on the topic remaining relevant post-COVID-19. We are partnering with APEX Development, and I think this is something that a lot of young women, I think all of the young women who are on this forum need to be a part of this, because we are going to be discussing and providing these tools necessary. It is going to be from women who are professionals within their field, be it from emotional intelligence. We're going to be discussing topics ranging on artificial intelligence, sustainable agriculture, mental health, how to basically cope with everything that is going on. So I encourage each and every one of you to RSVP for this event, and I have posted the email within the group that everyone could view, and you could just email us so that we could send you the RSVP link. This is something that's going to be life-changing, and I think that everyone would benefit from it. Thank you so much.
That's fantastic. If you can share that in the chat, that would be wonderful. A great opportunity. Okay, next is Hannah.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this amazing 2-hour discussion. It's been really lovely to listen to you all. I'm going to keep it short since we still have a lot of people. I think regarding your question in terms of meaningful participation is such a good framing, because we do see a lot of moving back on civil society space even before COVID, and now with moving back on human rights and other moving back on democracy at this point. There is a point for us to hold up accountability towards our governments, and multilateral spaces are very important for that. I do know that for youth it can be quite difficult to understand these, and I think it was very helpful to see that mapping that Hori did in the beginning of this call. We are also launching an advocacy toolkit for specifically young feminists. We're going to do that next week, which is it's kind of mapping a little bit bigger than just Beijing+25. It's trying to make it more accessible in terms of the interlinkages with Agenda 2030 and UNFCCC and other instruments. So I would like to invite that. And then I do think that we really need to
have a brainstorming session on how to close the digital divide. I think that's such a good couple of points to raise early on in this discussion. And I posted the links in the chat. We have been trying to build the capacity of our networks in terms of how to host meaningful discussions online. But I would love to have a brainstorming session on that, and specifically thinking about young people in those spaces. But yeah, thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much. Yes, if you can share the toolkit or the information to join that workshop. And yeah, this is a really good point. It might be nice to reflect a little bit too about how we can start to create a space as a platform to share some of these things. So thank you so much. Next, we have Jane.
Oh, hi. Thank you for the opportunity. It's just a short, call to civil society members to remember, to really put focus on women in decision making. Despite, everything that is going on, we need to be very keen and vigilant on appointments that are going through. And as much as some would feel like women in decision making is just about, political candidates, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, of course, in regards to boards and anywhere where budgets are made. And this would help us, combat COVID. And, what has come up is, we are realizing that the people who are in this decision-making positions, don't really have a feminist lens. And thus we've been having civil society really having to fight for women's concerns like pregnancy during quarantine or transportation of pregnant women during curfew hours. At least we've had a win in that, in advocacy and stuff. And the other thing would be paying attention to food security issues, just bringing back attention, because I'm executive director of the Green Party in Kenya, and we're really focusing right now on reestablishing subsistence farming or home garden farming, because as much as you can get food aid in packets of flour, you can't really get the vegetables or whatever to go along with it. So just reinventing that wheel and focusing on how we can bring back food security towards people, because you're realizing food production is concentrated in some areas or some counties or some local jurisdictions, and some areas fully depend on other areas, which means that most of these women are hit hard because there's no longer income to be able to buy, food as they used to, or even access the transport. So, economic justice is, really a key component to ensure that, people are self-sufficient, or women are self-sufficient. And I just would like, the community of civil society, not to forget these two key areas. That's it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We have time for one more, so I'm going to hand over to Marie Ann as our final speaker.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy of this meeting, and thank you to all of you. I have 2 points. I am in confinement in Belgium, in Europe. My first point is violence against women rising dramatically, and also against children in difficulties. So all the help centers dealing with women to help them, but we must ask men to react against violence. And so this could be one important subject for us all. And the second point is that politics are choosing now economy for going out of confinement, and they are not choosing people. So we must also, as a group, strengthen our voice for equality. So thank you.
Thank you so much. 2 very important points. So unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but those who have raised their hands, please feel welcome to post your comments in the chat. We also want to brainstorm a little bit. So if you have further ideas on how this space can be most helpful to you at this time, we were originally thinking maybe once a month we could have this kind of a call, but some of the suggestions that have emerged seemed very relevant. So even if you have a suggestion, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, like more regular meeting would be helpful for you. Some of these points about brainstorming how to close the digital divide, or brainstorming about how to address the increase in gender-based violence